Necromancy, a short story about a young man trying the forbidden art, the unknown. The storm had been raging for days and was showing no signs of peace. It almost made a small wagon fall over into the ditch and make the lone driver lose all of his cargo. As the ox was pulling up towards the foot of the mountain, snow began to fall once more, like the winter was about to come back. This was a wasteland, a forgotten place that no one ever visited. Far down the mountain in the valley, there was a village resting, but the traveler was heading for another direction. He was going up the mountain and away from the village. This was where his home was, in a small cabin. He jumped down and grabbed the ox by his nose ring and pulled. A few steps left, and home sweet home again. With one hand he pushed the door open. He never really locked his house. And with the other hand he dragged the two old ox inside the cabin. This was an inbuilt stable for Oxard, the name of the ox. When the cart came inside, the traveler finally pushed the door behind him to close out the fierce storm. The ox fell to its knees and let his head rest on the ground. Soon after it was completely asleep. The traveler, however, was still eagerly up, and showing no signs of fatigue. "Finally I can start my work. I have so much to test," said Yuaki, while he was climbing up the rear end of the wagon. He ripped off the blankets and viewed his cargo. "I have been waiting for the armies for weeks to finally meet in a clash. This war has truly been a blessing." Yuaki looked down at what he had excavated from the battlefield and brought home. He hoped no one from the village or the nearby village had seen him arrive. Not that they would suspect him of anything, but he didn't want the company he usually got. The only witnesses of his nightly doings was his old ox and the western winter winds. And speaking of which, would starting to make sizzling sounds outside his cabin doors. Maybe even trying to tell the whole world what was about to go on. Yuaki had a lot to do now. He grabbed the feet of a soldier and started to pull. Guys, you must have been some of the regular infantry. Poor clothes and dirty boots gives you all away, pal." He dragged the corpse into the next room, where he had laid it down in the snowbed floor. It was a very large room. Yuaki had inherited this house from his older brother, who had died several years earlier. It was also the house they both had grown up in together with their parents. It was first built as a hunting cabin by a lord, but that lord was killed during a war, and the house was given to Yuaki's father for his service in the army. One cared less about the enemy's properties, especially when they're dead, and it was a good way to pay off your soldiers. Yuaki had grown up with many childhood friends living within the area, also with fathers who were war veterans. When Algarit, the older brother, had inherited the house, he had rebuilt it for what it was. He was the one who built the stables and the dog kennels. Their father had sold all of their former owner's hunting trophies. Algarit had filled the game room with new ones. Now the deer and wild boars was looking down on Yuaki while he was dragging the dead soldier into the middle of the game room. Yuaki had made changes too. The day before he left, he had opened the roof to let the snow fall in. The game room once had a fireplace to warm the hunters after their hunt. Yuaki needed that space for his tools and books. Books most people don't read or want to read. Books best not speak of. "So, my friend, I have prepared this room for you. I didn't want to work inside the stables, and nor does my friend Oxard, 'cause you do stink. So stay cold here while I get your other friends." He paused to think. "I don't think you will rot inside here. What do you say? Do you need more snow?" It took Yuaki the entire night to carry all the dead bodies into the game room. He had also brought some more snow from outside to cover them in, just in case. You never know when there will be another battle, and digging up corpses is a risky business. No, these bodies needed to stay fresh, or the entire house would smell. When he was done with all the heavy lifting, Yuki locked his door for the first time. "Tomorrow, my friends," he said before turning toward his sleeping quarters. The house was biting cold as he crawled out of his clothes and deep into his father's bed. In the end, he was lucky that his older brother had been a hunter by trade, and that he never sold all those pelts. Regardless of how much the wind screams at you, a tired man falls to sleep. While he slept, the raging wind kept on blowing outside the house. But another sound broke it all, a scream of sort, or a painful hurl. Yaki awoke with an instant. It was still dark and no signs of light from outside. He didn't know where the sound had come from, but in his mind there was only from one place it could have origined. He rushed down the stairs and grabbed the door handle to the game room. Suddenly he paused and stood there, holding the doorknob. Long into the wind he listened, searching for a sound other than raging wind. Then he pushed the door open, while it creaked and pressed at snow laying in its way. The dead bodies was all covered in snow, and Yuki had been completely wrong about getting more snow from outside. With sharp steps, he walked over to his workplace and checked his tools from Far East. Nothing was missing, and nothing was, in a way, that it shouldn't be. So he opened his traveler pack. With one hand he pulled out a small object covered in fox pelt. Removing layers of pelt, he found a small box. The lock was still intact. This time he could clearly hear the sound's origin. Stable. Oxard! Yuaki found his companion standing in shivers, looking at him with big, painful eyes. I I'm sorry, my friend. I really forgot about you. This must be horrible cold even for you, I guess. You must have been warm from pulling my wagon around everywhere. And now your master makes this house that is rightfully yours completely cold. I'm sorry, but your master is an idiot. Even after the ox was covered in warm pelts, there was more to where it came from. Algarit, his older brother, had been a busy hunter. I forgot this climate isn't what you're used to, said Yuki, while he was clapping his ox on its back. Gently the creature was exhaling from his nose and slowly moving into deep slumber once more. You and me, we take care of each other, right? You carried me and my new treasure back here. I feed you and make sure you stay warm. I saved you from that butcher too, right? Remember? Well, I guess you don't know he was going to slaughter you. Better you don't know. Oxard was an old ox with bad eyesight, yet strong and full of endurance. But it had been a more rebel toward its master in its younger days. That is why it was about to get slaughtered by its former owner. Right now he was spinning like a cat while he lay there. When walking back towards his own sleeping quarters, Yuki made a look at the big pile of snow and thought about what he was doing and what was lying beneath. Eyes moving toward his hands and what they were holding. He slowed down and stopped breathing. He had been careless and childish. He had never come this far into his little project. When things are starting to get in order, he had forgotten the things he was dealing with. He went back up the stairs and into the master bedroom. He and his little box covered in fox pelt vanished below the layers of kilt. He slept. The wind was still trying to do whatever it was trying to do. Morning. Waking up with a bang and a bang on the door. The vessel the soul traveled in wasn't capable of raising itself up. Instead, the body lay there, heavy and still, the mind shouting, get up, before whoever it could be enters and ruins it all. There is a thing in here that is not for mortal eyes. But the body, unmovable, arms and legs could only jiggle on spot. With one big push from his left leg, Yuaki was able to roll over to his belly. And after that, he could slide the same leg outside the bed and push it hard into the floor. He was able to rise a new man on this new morning. Every muscle in his body demanded payback, rest. He was not built for this kind of heavy work. He was not his older brother. "Good morning, Yuhaki," said the old man, after waiting several minutes from the moment he started banging on the door. "My neighbor saw you last night coming up the hill with your wagon and ox." He had problems speaking clearly, due to holding his hands on his cheek. It looked swollen. His problem with making a speech probably came from the swelling, and not his hand. With a stiffness to his tone, Yuhaki answered back. "Good morning to yourself. What can I do you for?" "My tooth, you see. I think it's something wrong with it. Ugrad, the blacksmith, suggested we pull it out. On the other hand, I think that will only hurt. Not many from the village want to talk to you, I know, but I heard—" "Go on." "That if someone could save the tooth, that one would be you. Could you save my tooth?" The villagers only came here when they felt that he was the only option to a strange problem. He always fixed it. He could fix this too. Curing the hole in the old man's tooth didn't require much. It was a routine task. Fur dust and some bone marrow from a pig would do the job. But the ritual took time, and always had the same result, increasing the distance from the villagers and him. If he fixed the old man's tooth, then the old man would go down the hill and into the village. In a small village where everyone knew each other, they would all know that old Gatsby woke with tooth problems, and after he came down the hill from the strange hermit, he was cured. He would then tell everyone about what had happened, and after a while, after some blasphemies had been said and some other explanations had been done, even Gatsby would think there is something strange about the man named Yuaki. And then, for some unknown reason, they would charge him for more money for buying fish down at the village. But there was one more big issue with helping him. They would need to go inside, and that was an absolute. "No," said Yuaki, "I can't help you. That is the straight truth." It was a straight white lie. "I agree with Igrad, your neighbor the blacksmith. I think pulling out the tooth is the best course of action." He needed to get rid of the old man. "But I believed in you. You helped Suvria with her foot, and you helped Charlene with her baby. That was in matters fitted for my nature. Your tooth is rotting. It need to be pulled. That will also kill the root. Words to convince. You need someone with steady hands for this kind of job. Sorry, I can't do the impossible. But tonight I will do the impossible, echoed in Yuaki's head. I see. I will go back then, answered Gatsby as a sorrow face started to emerge. The old man Gatsby turned around to head home. Yuaki had been thinking about offering something to help with the pain, but not today. He really wanted to get rid of the man. Not until the man had vanished behind the trees did Yuaki close his door. If it was from guilt of paranoia, he didn't know. Right now, he didn't even care. So much to do. He needed to prepare. Tonight was the night. The ox was still asleep and didn't wake to its master's rumbling and tumbling. All the bodies must get cleaned. I also need to preserve them. He went for his books. Among them was a book with no title. It once had one, but it was carved out. Some words are better not uttered. Blood magic is a quite formidable art. In the middle section of the book was the inscription in need for this kind of work: Stone Hearts. The old pages was filled with pictures of clay, stones, and different kinds of markings, together with explaining scriptures. Yuhaki studied the pages while he opened his bag and took out a pile of clay. He laid down the book with the page open while he started to work and shape the clay. It turned into a small ball, a lot larger than your fist. A small pointed blade that would only suit to cut open clothes ran down slowly across the palm of Yuaki's hand. Blood ran gently out and dripped down onto the clay. Yuaki, with his hand cut open, started to work once more, forcing his own blood into the work, into the clay. My heart, my blood, his voice uttered in the room. He was chanting it. My blood, my belonging. He continued his spell, chanting until he had 8 bloody balls. 8 heart for 8 bodies. It was suddenly a silent game room. Or maybe now it was more a ritual room. He wrapped a small blanket around his hands and exhaled. It was now time to make the circle of magic. He pushed down his foot into the snow and walked in a circle to create a border. Together with some blood from his hand, he made a clean red circle. He then stood in the center, eyes focused up towards the sky. It was soon lunchtime, yet he didn't feel the hunger for food, only hunger for necromancy. My magic binds this place, and my magic stays within this area. Nothing escapes my circle of magic. He opened the box. It was empty, it was completely empty, until he laid down the clay stones into the box. With the box on the snow-budded floor, the ritual could begin. Dead souls from my box, wake up. Inherit my gift and take possession of my hearts. These hearts of blood and clay are yours. The box moved, like something inside woke up. This was proof. So many days and nights he had only believed. Now he saw the box did move. Time and magic started to fly by. It started to get dark outside. The woman and her dogs walked up the hill towards the cabin with sure steps and eager temper. With force and impatient, she slammed her fist on the door until any form of sound was heard from inside. Even though it wasn't the sound she was hoping for, she wanted to hear someone walk close up to the door and greet her. Yet she heard talk and shouting. Was he having a visitor? No one visited him, the woman thought. With her ears pressed at the door, she could hear a mixture of screams and singing. Or was he screaming a song? It didn't sound right. But impatience conquered curiosity, and she slammed her fist on the door once more, this time harder and even angry. So hard she never noticed that the door opened. Yuaki almost got hit. It's your dogs, and you were supposed to come get them first thing when you come back. With an angry voice, the woman almost shouted. Now it's all dark and I had to walk them up all here. The 9 dogs did belong to Yuaki. It was Algorit's hunting dogs. The thing was, Yuaki didn't want them, especially not now. It was an easy task getting rid of them temporarily when he was out on travels. Esmeralda, the woman, usually helped out in those cases, after some hard convincing. He wasn't really surprised. She was up here all angry. Dogs are hungry beasts, and they can easily eat you out of the house. Algorit, Yuki's older brother, had constantly fed them with hunting from deer. Now they were only growing agitated and fat. Can you possibly look after them one more day? Yuki tried, but he didn't even get a response. Esmeralda only turned around and went down the hill straight home. 9 dogs were all looking at her, walking away, never looking back at them. They were abandoned, with this stranger who was supposed to be their real master. A master that didn't want them. 9 heads from beasts that were bred to kill turned around and glared at Yuaki. She hadn't helped him get them into the dog kennel. In fact, she had just left them in front of the door. There was a small urge for Yuaki to let them loose into the wild. They would survive, he was sure of it, but they might survive on him. Having them loose might be a mistake that comes back to bite him, literally. Those dogs always looked at him with rivalism. It was pack hierarchy test. All right, this way? An arm pointing at the dog kennel. Not one dog stopped looking at him. Instead, they kept their glare. He went towards the dog kennel and tried to wave his hands for them to follow. Nothing happened. It was time to do the thing that always worked. He went inside to find some meat. His plan was to simply throw a bone inside the cage to lure them inside. There was no food whatsoever. The more he looked, the more he realized. He hadn't eaten the entire day. Suddenly the stomach roared and his own food hunger came. He didn't have time for this. Dogs eating, it was a waste of time. He needed to take care of dogs and then he could focus on getting some food for himself. The only meat he found was his big ox, and he did have something more. Didn't meat matter? Meat is meat, right? Yuhaki went into the kitchen. He knew it was here somewhere. The big meat hatchet did hang on the wall, used several times to hack off bones and muscles of dead animals. It was a big thing, requiring his 2 hands. Almost felt like a tool used to chop off heads of guilty people, and who knew what the old lord had used it for. Inside the game room, He took the first dead body he could grab and laid his leg ready and free. With one big swing from the blade's weight, it chopped off the knee down. He laid down the blade on the work table and took up the blue dead leg. It was dead cold with frost on its toes. Once the door opened and the foot touched the ground, Bites and Claws was right on the hunt. There was no point in waiting or listening. The dogs wanted to devour it all. It became a duel between him and the beast. It was strong and could really pull. Yuaki was fighting while staring right into the eyes of a killer, trained by his older brother to gnaw down wild animals. The pack had moved around outside the house during the time he had prepared inside. Therefore not all of them was on him immediately, but soon the dogs would rip the meat off front of him before he got them inside the dog kennel. Yuaki pushed himself free with all the strength remaining inside him, and then threw the big leg into the dog kennel. The leg was flying into the air but never touched the ground. Two dogs made a jump in the air for the catch. With the last dog inside the cage, Yuaki closed the gate and shut it tight. Roaring violence ripped and tear behind his back while he walked away from the dog responsibility, in hope the dead leg would make them sick and die off. Yuaki walked back inside his red circle of magic and grabbed his box. It was quite heavy. He lifted the box to his ear, so his skin and wood would touch. It was a strange sound inside. From inside the box he could hear heartbeat. Thrilling excitement crawled up his spine. He put the box down on the ground slowly. It was time for the real ritual. Time to complete his long search for eternal life. But first, the dead bodies. One by one they were put on the work table. Heavy lifting is truly what it is. Well-built, muscular bodies. They were from different sides of the battle, different armor and different boots. They had no weapons with them, of course. Yuaki had left those on the battlefield. One by one they were cleaned. He had done this before. Cleaning dead skin with oils from the east. Even though he didn't perform the mummification ritual, he wanted to make it as similar as possible. But most importantly was the magical properties of the oils. They didn't come cheap, but that's what happens when things becomes illegal. Their entire skin needed to be coated. They also needed to be shaved, all hair gone. Otherwise the hair would prevent the oil from reaching the skin. The work took several hours, for once Yuaki did feel his hunger for food. After all the work he had done, and only one thing remaining, waking him up to life. But he was hungry and tired. Why now? His body screamed after food and sleep. But if he left everything as it was, the oil would crystallize in the cold. But the instruction he followed from his books also described a window of time to perform Necromancy ritual, and the time the oil was put on. The oils was expensive and very hard to come by. But one more thing prevented him from going to sleep and leave everything until morning: the box. Not only did he know what was locked inside, but if only 5 hours ago he opened and performed his blood magic spell to create blood hearts, all that was needed was a careful, peaceful gush of wind, and the little magic circle would break. So he had no choice but to ignore his mortal physical needs and proceed through the night, finishing everything right here and now. All those years of studying, all that energy laid into gathering the right materials and what he had to do to get that thing into the box. So tonight was the night. Part 1 of Necromancy end.